And we are live. It is 7:29 a.m. in Arizona, so I'm gonna hold off for a few minutes here, since I said I would start at 7:30, and making sure that I can use these new Zoom or YouTube features. I haven't done a YouTube live in a bit. It's kind of nice because actually, when I used to do YouTube lives, you had to use a broadcaster to attach it to your YouTube to go live, and now you don't have to do that. Although I think there are advantages to that. So, um, just a random side note. Okay, I'm gonna see if this screen sharing works. There we go. All right, and let's see. Hopefully, let me just check. Move this over. Make sure it's actually sharing. It looks like we're sharing. Okay, so we are live, and today is the official release of Actuarial Toolkit. I'm excited about it. So, the goal of this YouTube is just for awareness so that I can let everyone know that the product is now launched, but also to go through and tell you what it is, kind of what my goals were in creating it, and go through some examples, show you the various tools. I'll see if I have time to go through at least some of them, maybe a little quick hit of all of them. So, to back up a little bit, I started working on this project many years ago, and I think I alluded to it on my YouTube as well as elsewhere. And this kind of started with the vision of making some data setup items for actuaries more streamlined and more efficient. So, a little background about myself is I majored in math and did grad school in statistics. I've had various positions in actuarial. Um, I also taught for a while, so I taught statistics. I taught some actuarial science as well. And through kind of all of this, um, I had, in particular, I had one job where I was doing, I would say, more actuarial programming, and it was kind of data setup where I would work with the actuaries and they would want exhibits or different things set up a certain way. And I think it was during that time that I first got inspired to create something like this. I was like, there really kind of is a need to automate some of the data setup side of things. So that's a little bit about the background, and then it's just been this thing that I've been working on for several years. But I've also been busy with other stuff, so it's kind of been this slow grind. And today is the release date, so that's a little bit of a background. What is it? So before I go into this Excel workbook here, I want to open up. This is just a little excerpt from my website, but I just have a few very simple pages out there on actuarialtoolkit.com. I've got the homepage section of demos, which is being updated as of today or tomorrow. Some of the demos I created are before I fixed a few of the tools, so those will be going live as well. This specs page is nice because this will show you sort of a walkthrough of what the various features are. But what is it? So, Actuarial Toolkit is an Excel add in. So the ribbon at the top of Microsoft Excel, it's just basically a new ribbon, and it's a set of tools to help with data efficiencies. And you can see here the items that you get with the subscription. So the main thing, obviously, is getting access to the tools, but then there will be ongoing enhancements to the tool based on user feedback and any updates that are made throughout the coming years. So it's I think it's kind of cool because you're sort of part of an actuarial community, being able to submit ideas or maybe tool updates or things that you think would be nice to have to help your life be a little bit easier. Um, so I like that aspect of it. And I think on that note, I'm going to flip back over here and give you a little bit of a rundown of the tools themselves. So if you look up at the top ribbon here, once you install it, it's Actuarial Toolkit Professional version 1.0, and you'll see a bunch of tools here at the top. So there's kind of these 5 core tools, one called Dynamic Pivot, one called Leg Development, one called Trend Setup, and one called Graph Setup, and then a Search ASOPs feature. And then over on the left here, you'll see a bunch of shortcuts, and these are just quick sort of shortcuts that are little time savers that I've thought of over time that I think would be helpful to use. So again, it's just really a ribbon within Excel as an add-in to help you with a lot of your Excel type items. So this, I should also point out, it's not cloud-based at all. So this all runs locally in your Windows environment. Actuaries, of course, work with a lot of sensitive data quite often, and so whatever permissions you have set up at your company locally, this is just like using Excel locally. It's only running the VBA through Excel. The only tool that goes to an outside website to access anything is this Search ASOPs tool, which is literally just a search function. So this one's pretty cool though, which I'll show you in a little bit. Um, but everything else is run completely locally within, like I said, within the Windows environment. So let's start out with the first tool called the dynamic pivot. And I've created these randomized sample data sets that I'm going to use for these examples. So I've got sample healthcare data. You could be a property casualty firm. This could be property casualty data, maybe life insurance. It could be really anything. And this particular tool is I kind of in a way it's kind of like using a pivot table, but it's a more powerful version of that. So the reason I created this one is because quite often I find myself creating summarized tables, maybe doing some sort of ad hoc analysis where I want to get unique combinations of certain columns, and I want to do some sum ifs or mean ifs or maximums, minimums, various things off of a table, and I want to have those formulas, and I want to have that table be able to update live. The annoying thing about pivot tables is number one, you have to refresh them, and then number two, with pivot tables, you don't have the formulas, so you have a set value within your pivot table, and you don't have access to the formula, so it's not as easy to edit a pivot table. So that's a little background on that. So what you do is, like, here I'm in my data set, I click dynamic pivot, it'll sense where your table's at, but if it's off, you can actually manually select it as well. I'm going to go next. And then over here on the side, it's got what is called your base data. So this is literally just your column names. And I'm going to select 2 different things. I've got my group by variables and my summary variables here. And so I'm going to select, just in this fake example, I've got employer A through J. I've got employer size. Maybe this is an insurance company with self-funded and fully insured business. So I have it separated by type. And then I've got just 3 fields in here: allowed amount, insurance paid amount, and member paid amount. This is, of course, a health example. Like I said, this could be really any type of insurance company, any type of data that you want. Um, so let's just say I wanted to do a quick group by with using employer, and I want to summarize my allowed amount, insurance paid amount, and member paid amount. I want to look at maybe a sum, maximum, account, and I don't know, let's throw in a sample standard deviation. So what this does is you press the button. Oh, I, I didn't select my variables. Let's go back. So let's recreate that. Um, Back to my sample health data, and we're going to go dynamic pivot, and we set employer, and we want to go by these three. Boom. So you have to say use as summary. I didn't press that. If you don't select any summary variables, actually, I should point out that is kind of a nice feature though. If you just want to get a unique grouping from your columns, you could do that without summary variables really quickly. So within Excel, of course, you can do remove duplicates. That would be kind of similar to doing something like that. But let's just go back and do our max, count, mean, sample standard deviation, create summarized table. And then what it's going to do is it's going to create this table here. So it doesn't at all modify your workbook. So this tool, sorry, I shouldn't say it that way. It modifies your workbook in the sense that it adds tabs, but it doesn't modify or change any existing tabs within your workbook. So that sample health data tab, all it did was use that to source the data, and then it created two tabs. It called one called ATK base data 2 and one called ATK Metrics 2. Of course, because I just created that first one called ATK Base Data 1, ATK Metrics 1. So it'll kind of increment and it makes sure that the tab name doesn't currently exist within the workbook. But what it's done is it's created over here on the side is my unique listing of employers. So of the 10,000 rows in the data set, it grabbed the unique listing of employers. And then over here, this would be, again, kind of like a pivot table where you've got a sum. It sets up the formulas for you. So the great thing about this is if I were to do a pivot table, number one, I don't have these setup formulas. And then number two, when you update this data set, it'll automatically update your table. Having said that, just note that right now the formulas go down to the bottom of your data. So, like anything within Excel, if you're updating it, you would have to make sure that to expand your formulas down. Um, in the future, I might make a change where it you don't even have to do that. But as of right now, you would have to do that if you updated your table. Um, but what I like about this is it organizes it a little bit nicer too. So, like here, I've got variable one. So I've got allowed amount. Here, I've got variable two, insurance paid amount. Here, I've got variable three, member paid amount. And it lists them in a clean way so that I can see the exact variables that I selected. And then beneath that, I've got the various metrics that I chose. So I selected some max, min, count, standard deviation. So those are the ones that show up here, and it's listed very cleanly beneath each variable that I selected. And then below, you've got some checks just to make sure everything's flowing through correctly. Um, so that's kind of the first example. But what I want to show you now, I'm going to use the same tool, and I'm going to go over here. And let's just say that I wanted to make another dynamic pivot and I want to go employer, employer size. So you could do as many group by variables as you want. The other one I just did one. Maybe I only want to look at insurance paid amount, and maybe I only care about sum and mean. I don't know. And I'm going to go create summarized table. So here I'm just showing you that you could do any pivot that you want. Now it's grabbing my unique combinations of employer and employer size, and it's grabbing insurance paid amount, and I only chose sum and mean, and it's got my formulas in there, of course, the sum ifs, average ifs, with built within there. And then I should show one last thing. Maybe I'll use my one of my other data sets here. Let's go. I have a sample stock data set. This is from stock market prices going back to 2011. So this is a fairly old stock market data set. But let's just say that I wanted to summarize this. I'm going to do a dynamic pivot. And let's just say that I wanted to do a lookup based on quarter. And I wanted to look up the first, let's look up the first open price by quarter. So it's going to find the first occurrence of open price by quarter. I'm going to press create summarize table, and I only have 2 quarters in there. So the reason I wanted to do this one is I want to show you that it's not a VLOOKUP formula, but it'll automatically set up your index match function for you. So um, I know quite a few people like to use index match over using a VLOOKUP. It's nice because you can more dynamically update a table and insert columns with your index match versus your VLOOKUP. So this will set up those index match formulas for you and look up. This just looked up the first open price by quarter. So, and as you can see down here, I've got four. What do I have? Yeah, 4 different tabs. So 4 ATK based data tabs, 4 ATK metrics tabs that got set up for me. And it didn't modify anything else in my workbook. So if I don't like, didn't like this version of it, you can just go delete those. So let's actually clean this up so that we can do the next tool. And I should be paying attention over here in YouTube live land to make sure I know where the chat is. Okay, so I think I know where the chat is. If there are any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I know also a lot of people will probably watch later as well. So if you're watching this after the live, feel free to put those in the comments of the YouTube video, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, let's go on to tool number 2 that currently exists in the version 1.0. Like I said, this is kind of ever evolving, and I'm sure there will be more tools, more updates along the way. This one is called the leg development tool, and I will say a lot of friends and actuaries make fun of me for the way I say leg. I I don't know if it's a Midwest accent. I'm actually not from the Midwest. A lot of people say it's a Midwest accent, but I can't pronounce leg correctly. Apparently, I pronounce it with an E, but ironically, I have a leg tool within within my actuarial toolkit. So, just to give you a little background on this one, I really love this tool. So this is if you're working in reserving, or if you need to estimate completion factors, or do anything related to looking at sort of the development of claims over time, or not just claims, maybe something else that you're looking at. But you could look at claims dollars, you could look at units, you could look at development of a lot of different items with this tool. But what I like about this is there's kind of 2 purposes. So one is you might be a company that already has, let's say you have a reserving department and you already have a reserving model set up. I mean, a lot of companies do. So you might ask me like, why would you want to use a tool like this? And my answer would be, I would use it a lot for ad hoc type stuff. So I've worked with reserving, and I've worked with set models and reserving, but sometimes I'm doing a side analysis or maybe a pricing exercise where I'm like, oh, I want to figure out what the completion factors are for this particular project, and my data doesn't fit my model perfectly that I have existing at my company. So maybe it requires like 30 months of data, maybe it requires 25 months or a few years or whatever it is. And it's set up for particular lines of business, and it's hard to dynamically update, and so it's hard to take your data that you're working on the side and throw it in your maybe your cookie cutter model or whatever you have set up. So what I particularly love about this one is it allows you to do a very dynamic sort of side ad hoc analysis for that. Or maybe you don't have maybe you're starting up some sort of company, and or it's a smaller company and you don't have a reserving model set up. This could be a good starting point. With any of these tools, I should caveat that this is not to replace any actuary in any way. This is just to help you with data efficiencies and to get things set up. And you should not just blindly run this and then and then use it. So I'm going to show you that in this tool. This is going to help you set up your triangles, and then of course you would have to do several things to actually use it. So let's just suppose that I have this data set here, and this is the one I was just using. And let's click on leg development. I'm going to press next, and it's going to pop up with this form. So this tool, at first, I've been playing around with a lot of different ways of creating this form to make it the most intuitive possible. So if you've worked on completion factors or reserving, you know that there's an origin date and a development date. Quite often, your origin date, at least in the healthcare environment, your origin date might be incurred date, the incurred date of the claim, and your development date might be the paid date. Um, Maybe in property casualty, you're looking at the accident date. Of course, in health insurance, your exposures are member months. Property casualty, you might be looking at buildings, you might be looking at something else. So, I should point out, this is a chain ladder development of reserving triangles, which actuaries know is a certain type of way to set up your reserving triangles. Um, it's a very common way to set up completion factors or or to estimate completion factors. So this is set up kind of the way that you might see the triangle at the top. You've got this blue section that would be um, sort of your whatever development or whatever you choose to span the top. Right now, the orientation is development date is blue on the top and origin date is green on the side because I have date spanning rows as my selection for origin date. So origin date goes down the rows, down column A, it spans the rows. If I change this and I say I want date spanning columns, it'll switch the orientation and you'll see origin date at the top because that is now spanning the columns, and development date in green over here on the side, which is going to match what you have listed up here in green and blue. So let's go back to date spanning rows. And let's just say that in this example, I want incur date to span my rows. I know that's my origin date, so I want that to match. So you want to be careful that your origin date matches the green color, because if you do the other way around, if I chose pay date there and incur date for my development date, things are going to get screwed up. And you would see that if you did if you ran the triangles. But I'm going to go incur date. I'm going to go pay date over here. And then it asks for your aggregation level, which in this fake example, I've aggregated by day. Maybe quite often, like in health insurance, you will have gone out to maybe your SQL environment or maybe your SAS environment or whatever database you have, and you might aggregate by month. I'm just going to say day, and I'm going to say day here. And now I should point out that your dates have to be in a uh, month, day, year format. So even if you've aggregated your data by month, let's say you've aggregated January of 2023, you would just put January 1st, 2023 or whatever day you want, but then it'll know that it's aggregated by month. Um, so my data is aggregated by day, and now I want to look at my reserving triangles by month. So this in the middle is talking about my dollars. That's an orange. So that's how I'm going to aggregate my data is by month. And I want to look at the loss development metric of allowed amount. We'll do a few other examples in a second. Um, and then finally, I've got the line of business split. So this could split by any column that I want, and it's going to separate out my tabs. You might have, like in this example, I've got different employers or fully insured, self-insured. Let's split by that. Maybe I'm looking at the total fully insured and total self-insured completion factors. I'm going to use that as my line of business split. But again, maybe I want to look at employer size. Maybe I want to split it out by employer. It's flexible to do any of that. In the health insurance world, maybe you're looking at different categories such as like child, adult, senior. You might be splitting out your cohorts, something like that. Um, there could be a lot of ways that you split up your triangles. Maybe you want to split it by category of service. So maybe you're looking at like inpatient versus ER completion factors or something like that. Or maybe you're just looking in total at one line of business. There's a lot of ways that we might look at completion factors, which is why it has that flexibility. So I'm going to press create triangles. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see it tells you where it's creating self-funded right now. It's creating fully insured right now. There were only two types. So now it's going to be done. And it's going to pop up with this message that just it's telling you what it read from basically from what I input. So it's saying incur date is assumed to precede paid date. Those are the two fields I selected in chronological order. If I had screwed that up, this would say paid date is assumed to precede incur date, which of course would be wrong. Um, then it says if the assumption is not met, development triangles might be inaccurate. Additionally, it assumed that the dates were in date format. Blah blah blah. It just gives you a few warnings there. But then I've got this sort of table of contents, and let's say I click on fully insured. It's linked over here to this tab. Um, and I should point out what it created. Again, it didn't modify anything else in my workbook other than adding tabs. So it's added ATK based uh, data one. It's added my triangle summary, and then it added two triangles because I had a split of self-funded and fully insured. So it just split by two categories. Of course, if I had 10 categories, I think I have like 10 employers listed in here as an example, it would split out by 10 tabs. So you can see at the top of this self-funded one, I've got a pretty standard chain ladder leg development, which is showing me my incurred date by month over here on the side. By the way, I aggregated my data was aggregated at the day level, but it knows now, it knew how to grab the unique listing of months, and it's split out my triangles in a way such that it's aggregated my data. So like incurred in March of 25, you can then see the development of the paid dollars going across here. And you can see it's going to be aggregating it over time. So we're moving across, it's aggregating across time, and it's created that first development. And then as I go down, you can see it's organizing my leg 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as I go further down, it's got my age to age factors, which is the ratio of like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, all those organized. And in this sample data set, it goes from January of 15 to December of 2018. So this would be obviously an old data set. This is just completely fake data. So we're going down, and now it's going to allow me to select my average. So quite often with the age to age factors, maybe your completion changes across time because maybe the claims department is processing claims faster or slower than they used to. And so these age to age factors might sort of change over time. So right now it's selecting all, but I could do a custom average. Let's say I just want to use the latest 6. I could select that. But if you're going to select the 6, you have to make sure you select custom average to use that to overwrite it um, instead of using all. So it'll tell you here what you actually selected in this row. And then as I go down, it's going to give you a little summary. So it's telling me I selected allowed amount. So that's the field that appears here. Now, again, that could be paid amount, that could be units, that could be really anything that I'm analyzing. And as I go from left to right, it summarizes the data in terms of what is that amount, what's my development factor, what's the completion factor? Of course, as you know, completion factor and development factor are really uh, the almost the same thing, sort of inverses of each other. Um, Projected ultimate allowed amount. So this is just saying what is your complete amount. Then I've got exposures, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Right now, that's all set to 1, and I'll show you where you can change that. And then a calculation of allowed amount per exposure, ultimate amount per exposure, and then what's the difference between the two. So Again, your exposures are going to be different based on the type of insurance you're working with. Um, of course, in health insurance, your exposures are going to be member months, but that could be different depending on um, the type of data you're working with. So, uh, this will then give you that full summary. And these completion factors, of course, if I were going in here and actually creating a reserve, I would go make adjustments. So you're not just going to blindly trust these, right? Like the especially the later months, as many actuaries know, you can't just blindly trust a completion factor. Maybe you're going to do some trends. Maybe you're going to adjust it in certain ways. Probably your line of business, certain things that are coming up or that have happened in the past, and you're gonna have to do a lot of stuff with your data. This is literally just a starting point. This is not a complete analysis. And over here on the side, you'll even see I've got this graph, which is going to show you. It looks weird in this example, but I've got the allowed amount in the dotted blue, and I've got the projected ultimate allowed amount in orange. So um, you can see since I made this fake data, I made this last November of 18, goes way down. And I would, if I were really doing an analysis, I'd be like, oh, what is that? I'd go look into that. But this will give you kind of a quick view of that, to kind of see what's going on. But again, you would be making adjustments to these down here, and then make sure that the full amount of the self-funded dollars is flowing through. So it'll do a check all the way, all my triangles. So you can see a check uh, up at the top where, or this one's over on the side. Um, I should go down here. That's making sure that those total dollars, which are incrementing over time, add up to the correct amount. This is making sure that in triangle 2, you can see it actually has all the way up the diagonal. The tool actually adds all those up to make sure that that should be the same, which it should be. And then it makes sure that the data in my total here is the same, and then it makes sure that the base data actually has that amount. So if you're running this, you should make sure these checks are okay and that you've got all the data that you would anticipate. And then I could go over to the fully insured one. I could do the exact same thing. You can see it's set up in the same way. This is now pulling in fully insured dollars, which in this fake example is 91 million as opposed to 275 million. And uh, I would do all my checks here, or all my data setup. So now I have kind of a starting point. Number one, if I don't have a reserving model, I could start with this and I could start playing around with it, and maybe add some adjustments, columns. Maybe I want to mess with the averages. Maybe I want to add some options here. But the nice thing is now you have dynamic formulas set up for you, and you have the triangle set up for you such that you can now go make the edits that you want to make. Um, so now I'm going to point out the exposures. Right now, if I had a set table of eligibility, let's say in a healthcare environment, I would have to go set up these exposures such that this is going to match by month, and I'm in the self-funded business. I would have to make sure that for January of 2015, self-funded, I have the correct amount of exposures here. You could do a quick and dirty analysis just on your totals, but as you know, that could skew your results in the sense that maybe you have like 50,000 members in one month, and then those members leave and you're down to 25,000 the next month, and it's going to make your total dollars go way down. But on a PMPM basis, it might be fairly similar. So you might want to still look at it that way. But you could do a quick and dirty analysis with total dollars if you wanted. But maybe I have an eligibility table where I set up formulas here, but let's just say I had 500 exposed. Maybe we'll just change it a little bit. I'll just do like a +1. So I'll add one member per month. And then what it does is it pulls in your exposures down here. It also, I should point out, these are now all by exposure. So these would all be PMPMs now. So this would be like pulling in your total dollars, and then the next table would be like your PMPMs. Um, and your age to age factors, by the way, don't change. So whether you have total dollars or whether you have PMPMs, because of the fact that you're doing it by incurred month and that you have the same members in your numerator and denominator, those will not change. But it will change the one table, and it will change these two columns over here because this will show you now your PMPMs. Um, I might have chose a for my fake base data. I probably should have chosen more members because these would be really crazy high PMPMs. Um, but you get the point there. And again, if you're in the property casualty environment, your exposures I know would be different in that case. But you could fill out those exposures and you can switch this up by line of business. I do want to point out for the property casualty people, I know quite often you might look by accident year. So this does have the ability to split it out by year as opposed to split out by months, which is kind of nice. So I am going to go over here and I'm going to go leg development and I'm over here. And let's just do this. Let's do the same orientate. Actually, you know what? Let's switch it up. Let's go. Uh, I want to show you how you can pivot this very quickly. So now I'm going to choose my origin date across the top. So now I have to make sure that I select incur date and put it up here and pay date and put it over here. So it is important to make sure that orientation is correct. And now what I'm going to do is my aggregation level is going to be, well, these are going to be the same, right? Because that's my base data. What is my base data aggregated at? And I want to use allowed amount again. And I want to aggregate by year this time. And let's just do total. So if you don't fill out any line of business split, it's just going to take whatever data you have and it's going to aggregate it in total. So let's go create triangles. And this one should be slightly faster. Yeah, there we go. And this is not going to have that table of contents page because you don't have the splits and you just have one triangle set up. Again, it's got my little warning here. And now what it's done is it's aggregated my data by year. So it's created two tabs. Here's my ATK base triangle data tab. And over here, you'll see what it's done is it's referencing your base data over here. That's your table. That's the data that I selected. And then over here, I have it split out by year. It has the calculations in place. And this is why it's important to have your date, your columns in date format. There may be some updates in the future where I would allow like any sort of format. Maybe I know some people already have their data like in a year month format, like Y. Let me think. MM. They might have it in that format. Or there could be a few other formats that you have it in. But I figure you could always easily convert your data into a date format. So that's what that accepts now. But this is the base data going over here. Here's my totals. You can see it by year. So now I've switched the orientation. My incurred year is now at the top, and my paid year is over on the side. So that's the cool thing about this tool. It's super flexible. It allows different aggregation levels, and it allows you to pivot your data um, really to span rows or span columns in terms of where your dates are. Now my exposures are down here because they should match the origin date. Your exposures are always going to match your origin date, not your development date. So instead of being over on the right side, they are now across the bottom, matching the origin date with my new orientation. And I've got my age to age factors. I can choose my averages. And then going down, I've got my summary table. Same sort of thing, but now it's all summarized by year. And then you've got your chart over here. And I don't have another tab because I did it all in total. And I should point out too, the other thing I really like about this tool is it allows the flexibility to quickly let's say I have more dates in my data. Like right now, I've got let me think, I've got an incur date, paid date, but let's just say you had like reporting date. Maybe I want to create like an IBNR, RBNP type analysis. So incur but not reported, reported but not paid. Maybe you want to split out your incur but not paid in that way. And if you want to do that, maybe you have your reporting date and you could then look at your development by reporting date. So you could go incurred to reporting, or you could go reporting to paid. Um, so you could do like two sort of completion factor analyses, and you could very quickly set that up as long as you have the data. Of course, as actuaries, we know that often getting the data might be a difficult thing because maybe reporting date is a field that's not accurately maintained by the insurance company. And if that's the case, that might be very difficult. But if you had that column, you could very, very quickly set something up, which is, again, what I really like about this. The other really nice thing is I can very quickly change, and let's actually do this. I could change the development metric that I'm looking at. So I did allowed amount. Let's go over here. And let's suppose that I wanted to look at member paid amount as my metric, my loss development metric. I don't have an example of units here, but I know quite often when you're looking at claims development, your dollars might complete differently than what your units might complete as. So that's why it has the flexibility to choose your loss development metric. But let's just go incur date, pay date. I'm going to go back to my traditional orientation here. I'm going to go member paid amount. Let's aggregate by year again. And let's do a different split just for the fun of it. Let's go employer size now instead of type. All right, I think I've got everything. Oh, see, I missed. So if I press create triangles, it should give me a warning. So must choose your x-axis current aggregation selection. Basically saying I didn't select this one or this one. So let's just go select that. I'm gonna go day. The reason that's important too is like if I selected year, it's actually not going to allow me now to aggregate by month or day because if my base data is aggregated by year, then that's the furthest level of aggregation that I could do. Eventually, I might add like a quarter aggregation in here. I think that would be nice. But I should point out too that if your base data is aggregated by year, you don't necessarily have to have the date format. You can. It'll accept two formats. It'll accept the date and it'll also accept just the year, if depending on which you have it formatted as. So that's the one caveat there. But let's go back to day because I have this set up by day. And what do we got? Member paid amount, employer size, year. I think that should be fine. So let's just do a quick create triangles. And this one, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, you'll see it's 51 to 500. 3 is 501 to 2000. 4, 2 to 50. It's now creating those leg development triangles. And it's cool because it's gotten the unique splits of my employer size and it's setting those up. Okay, so see, it's giving me a check now. So let's press OK. So what I now have is uniquely split out by these employer sizes. So you can see this one has a check. This is actually a perfect example of where my base data is not flowing through. And you know why this is? I'm actually glad I did this one. Is because I chose the wrong orientation. So this is why I'm saying it's important you choose the right orientation. Because if you don't have the dates in the order that it expects, then you're gonna have your data screwed up. And you'll very quickly see that. So this was a perfect example of that. Let's actually go back and let's select leg development. So that was because I told you I was gonna do the other orientation, and then I had the date spanning rows. So let's actually do date spanning rows. Why not? Let's go to incur date there, paid date there. Let's go to day. So now I've got my incurred, I've got my paid. You want to make sure that matches what your origin date is and your development date is. That's what I did the other way on that one. So let's go by year and we're going to go member paid amount. I don't want that as my LOB. I want that as my, so I'm going to say don't use. So if you don't want to use it, press don't use and then go press use for the loss development metric. So now I've got that oriented correctly. And let's choose, I can't remember which one I chose. Did I choose employer size? I think that's the one I chose. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm just making sure I have this set up correctly. So create triangles. Okay, so bottom left-hand corner, it's now creating my like triangles, and now it's analyzing it by member paid amount. Good, I didn't get that warning. So it gave me the warning and it gave me the checks because I screwed it up the way I split out my dates. And so this one worked. And now what I've got is triangles that look as they should. And I have it split out by member paid amount. So the cool thing is I very quickly could pivot on a different column and create my four, what do I have? Four triangles, which are now set up by employer size. So I just did a different pivot on what I want these on. So flexibility with what your metric is, flexibility on the orientation, flexibility on the line of business, and then flexibility on the way that you aggregate your data. But again, as with anything, this is just a starting point. As the actuary, you're gonna have to go in and make a lot of tweaks and do whatever you do. All right. That is probably good enough for this tool for now. There's so much I could talk about on all of these, but let's delete some of these so that we can move on. Just want to clean this up. Wow, I created a lot of these. Delete, delete. All right. The next tool, let's see, what's our time at? We're at 8:15, so um I want to make sure I hit some of these other ones before I do trend setup. So let's just see, let's skip forward and try this one, and then we could go back and work on some of these other ones if we have time. Um, so I've got this sample health data set, and let's suppose I now want to do a graph setup. This, so I was talking about the dynamic pivot being similar to a pivot table. This chart is kind of similar to a pivot chart, a little bit different though, and I'll show you why. So this is going to pop up with a form, and I think it's easiest just to show you what the output looks like first, and then we can go through this. Let's suppose I want to look at incurred date as my x-axis variable, and I want to look by month. So I'm going to choose month year here. And let's say I want my filters to be employer and employer size. And the line for my graph, maybe I want allowed amount and insurance paid amount. And I want to do the sum of those by incurred date and by my filters. So I'm going to name this sum of dollars. Create graph. And what this is going to do is it's going to pop up with automatically a line chart, and it's going to give you these selectors at the top. So I chose employer and employer size as my filtering variables. So it's now giving me the unique listing of employers, the unique listing of employer size, and it's giving me the allowed amount and the insurance paid amount as my lines that I chose. And it's split it out by incurred month. So I had my data, as you know, there was 10,000 rows from the last example. Um, those were split out by day, and now this is organized by month. You can see a drop here. Of course, this is supposed to mimic like if you had incurred data and you had a drop at the end, it's not fully complete. So that's kind of what's going on there. And then what you can do now is automatically select, let's say I want to look at just company B, C, and D, and I want to look at all, I'm just going to leave employer sizes all. If you press graph update up here, it'll then update your graph based on company B, C, and D. And you'll notice in this selection box down here, it tells me that my selections were company B, C, and D, and my employer size is set to all. So always look at this to see what you actually have selected in your chart, because I could go reselect and it's not updated yet. So I want to do company E, but it's still B, C, and D, and it will update as soon as I press graph update. So now you can see just company E, and it gives me this nice graph. So a couple advantages to using this one as opposed to like a pivot chart is number one, the format I like a lot better. It's a lot cleaner to look at. Number two, it automatically will do it in terms of a line chart. You don't have to like go adjust it, and you don't have to go think about all the pivot options. So I do like that component of it. It also allows that flexibility with your date to choose. You could have whatever field. It doesn't actually have to be a date. Like I could choose maybe employer is what my x-axis is. I could choose that, or I could choose the date, and it allows the ability to choose month or year of the date if I wanted to summarize that. Also, it allows for calculations, which I'm going to show you in a second. The reason I like the calculations feature is it's going to allow me to have different filters for various pieces of my calculation. Um, which I'll show you an example of. So, but let's first go back and let's suppose that I want to look at this. I'm going to go incur date again, and now I'm going to use year. And let's say I only want one filter. You could do as many filters as you want. I'm just going to do employer. And let's say I just want to look at member paid amount. And I'm going to do the sum. I'm just going to call this test. So when it pops up, you're going to see this is just now member paid amount, and it's summarized it by year because I selected year. So you see 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. The other thing that I like about this over a pivot chart is you have the formulas. So down here, if you want to make edits to this, you could make edits to this. So what it does with the graph is it creates this ATK based data. This again is pointing to your base data. It creates a key over here, and there are these include exclude variables that the Actuarial Toolkit uses for doing the filtering. So um, you can go in here and you can change how it's looking up its includes and excludes. You could change this around. It's over here on the right. This is where those filters are coming from, and this is where yeah, that's what's feeding sort of your include exclude. So there's flexibility in terms of making edits with this tool. This is um, one tool where you do have two buttons. So you have the one to set it up, and then you have the one for the update. I should point out that the update tab should know. So if I'm on another tab, it'll know it's not an ATK graph tab, is what it says. So it knows when it's a graph tab or not. You can change the name of the tab. It's just behind the scenes, there's a functionality where it's saving what type of tab it is. So it knows if it's an ATK graph tab and it knows what it's looking for. Um, I should point out in the graph tab, um, this is the one where let me see if I have. Oh no, I'm thinking of another tool. Never mind. But that's really the setup that you have for the graph tab. One other thing that I want to show you with this is if I go over to a different example and I want to do a calculation. So let's suppose that I have a table set up where I have like COA, COS, month, paid amount, and member month. So this is like a healthcare data set. Again, this is fake data, but let's just say I had three cohorts. I had adult, child, and senior, and I wanted to look at just inpatient, outpatient, and ER. And I have hardly any dates in this data set. I've got like 7 months in my data. And let's suppose that I want to look at PMs now. And over here on the right, I've got my eligibility table. So right now, the tool doesn't allow you to select two different tables. In the future, that may be an update, but right now, it only allows you to select one table. But you'd have to be very careful with the member months to make sure that you're only pulling a unique member month and not duplicating. So for adult January, you can see I have the 10,000 there. So let's actually highlight this. And then I'm going to go down. There's adult February. Or I should first highlight this. See how it's not duplicated. I made sure that's 0. I set up the formula so that's 0. Um, adult January, again, I should only bring it in one time. And then as soon as I'm in February, I bring in the next eligibility. So you can see them listed over here. There's the 10,020. There's my 10,020 for February. But that's just sort of a data setup item. But let's suppose now I want to make a chart off of this. If I go over here, I can now select month as my base variable. And I want my selectors to be the COA COS combination. And then I'm going to select paid dollars as my line. Now, this would just do sum of paid dollars if I left it. Over here on the right is where you have the ability to do these calculations. So let's suppose that I want to do a PMPM. I'm going to do the sum, and then it says use whatever line you've selected. So what the first variable in your calculation is always going to be your selection. So this is just saying sum of paid. And if I had paid, allowed, insurance, whatever, it's going to do sum of paid, sum of member amount, sum of insurance paid amount, whatever you have in there, divided by. Now I have the flexibility to choose anything. I could divide by itself. I could divide by COA, I could divide by COS, month, paid. Of course, it wouldn't make sense to divide by one of those, but it gives you the selection of anything else. And I know I want to divide by member months because I'm doing a PMPM. However, you'd have to be very careful because with a PMPM, as you know, we're going to select all paid dollars, but we don't want the member months to heed the COS filter. So I don't want to be limited just because of the way I set up my data. Um, if I pull this over to the side, if I did that, then like child outpatient, you can see as a 0 over here. But I would want to pull in child member months. I don't want to pull in the 0, and I also don't want to duplicate. So I could select over here my filter to heed to be COA. I want member months to always heed COA, and I want dollars to always heed everything. So this will now calculate like a PMPM. So I'm going to go PMPM, create graph. And now I've got my PMPMs and I've got this adult, child, senior, inpatient, outpatient selections for me over here. So now when I select, I'm just going to do a graph update. It knows what filters to heed. And if I look down here, you can see I have all inpatient and outpatient if I was looking at just those two together. And then maybe I want to go all here. Maybe I want to look at adult and child. Well, maybe I want to look at adult and child and ER. I could do any combination that I want. And it knows that the denominator of the calculation is heeding just the COA filter. So these are set up. So this is, you might wonder what these question marks are. These are regular expressions, which is a really cool way to do your filtering. I'm not going to go into that, but these are fully editable formulas where it knows for my numerator, it's knowing to include everything. So that's why it says include for both my, in this example, the cohort or the COA and the COS. And then here it knows that I'm filtering on the COA, but I don't care about the COSP. So I'm only filtering on the COA. So that's essentially what that's doing. But it sets up all the formulas for you. So you could do any sort of chart, any sort of filtering. I mean, I could have a million filters up here, and that's really what I love about this tool. So I should point out that this tab, none of these use named ranges, none of these tools, because I don't really like named ranges, except for this one. And it has just a couple of them where it needs to know, like here, you can see this ATK graph 16, graph max, and then this one, graph min. There's just a couple in here that I needed for when I do the graph update. It knows how to size everything correctly and it knows how to like make it look nice. So there's a few name ranges, but yeah, it is what it is. So you could delete the tabs. Everyone probably knows this, or some people might not know this, but in Excel, if you delete tabs, sometimes you'll get weird things with your named ranges. So if you go to the name manager, you get these. So see where I deleted some, but these are only for the graph tabs. So all the other tools don't use name ranges, but that's just a note that if you do delete graph tabs and you have those lingering name ranges, you can just go to the name manager and delete all of them, get rid of them. But if you get rid of the active ones, like this sheet here, the graph update won't work. So your active ones are listed in that name manager. That's just kind of a side note. You don't have to worry about the name manager if you don't want to, but this is the one tool that does have a couple of those. Okay, let's go to maybe we'll do one real quick example here. I'm going to use the stock data. I'm going to show you a graph setup with this. Let's suppose I wanted to look at quarter and stock as my selectors. Let's suppose I want the date. Um, yeah, let's do the month actually, the month of the date. Let's do the open price, high price, and low price in the stock market. And I'm just going to do the sum of dollars. So I'll just call this sum of dollars, create graph. And now I'm looking at stock market data, and this is kind of cool because I can see where the what the low price was for various months. I could see what the open price was and the high price was, and it's kind of as expected. The open price is between the low and the high price. If I wanted to look at just quarter one for stock AA and stock AXP, do my graph update. Boom. There you go. Quarter one. Why did it go down? Because I only selected quarter one. So you can see it filtered by just quarter one. Quarter two is now out of the data. So that'd be maybe a weird filter. But let's go back to all quarters. And maybe I want to look at just stock CAT graph update. And that's just that stock. And now I can see the updates down here. And it's everything is pivoting the way that I want it to pivot. And I've got all my filters. So that was another just quick example. But let's go to the search ASOPs example because we are at 8:30, so we got a little bit of time. Um, yeah, I gotta work today, so I gotta leave fairly soon here. Um, so what I want to show you is the actuarial standards of practice. This tool I really like. So I'm going to go over here. If you're an actuary, you know about the Actuarial Standards Board, ASOPs that are published. These are kind of our guiding principles. There's 58 of them. And many times, if I'm working on, let's say, an actuarial opinion or a memo, or maybe I'm just working on a project where I know there's some guiding principle about the topic, I want to look it up. So I'm going to look up, let's say, credibility. You can see I just did it a little bit ago. Do a search. The website will give you results, but it will also give you like all the exposure drafts and history. And I could go search through these. I find sometimes that I struggle with the search feature here, and I want to go back to the current ASOPs because I don't have like a clear listing of what ASOP's credibility exists in and where it exists. But I could go like, let's just say I clicked on ASOP 4 and I wanted to do a quick search in ASOP 4, I mean, I could use the website feature and just do a quick search for, credibility. I could look for it that way. But again, that's only going to tell me where credibility exists in ASOP 4. So what this tool does, if I go back here, is let's click here. Let's type in credibility. Make sure I spell it correct. Credibility. Search ASOPs. So what this tool does is it does a search for you, and you can see it's actually updating live. This one actually takes a little bit of time. It can take up to 2-ish minutes, maybe 3 if it's taking really long. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, it tells me what ASOP it's searching. So it says ASOP 11, 12, 13, 14. It's kind of progressing forward. Um, so this is searching the current uh, published ASOPs on the Actual Standards Board website, and it's just searching those current 58 ASOPs that are out there. I typed credibility, so it's going out and it's searching every ASOP for credibility. What's cool about this is it's going to give me, I mean, you can see the results already, and I'll scroll down them once this finishes, but it's giving me every listing of the word credibility that it finds within each ASOP, and it tells me how many matches there are. So you can see for the first one, ASOP number 2, it found 2 matches for credibility, and it gives me kind of the surrounding text, and it highlights the word that I was searching for, which was credibility. And then it tells me there was 1 match in ASOP 3, and then so on. So then I can very quickly see what ASOPs does that word exist in. Um, Maybe there's a lot of ASOPs, maybe there's only a little bit, and I can see like the density of the match within each ASOP. So there, it finished. So I don't know how long that took. Maybe it might have been a little less than 2 minutes. But if I go down, it's very cool because now each of these, like ASOP 11, I know it exists 3 times, and it'll find it in the titles, it'll find it in the text. Um, but you'll see credibility procedures. You would expect it to be the most in there. So I think there's a lot of matches in there. There's 82 matches in credibility procedures. Um, but I like this because now maybe I was interested in Bayesian credibility and Bowman credibility. You can see match 68. Like I can now go over to the Actuarial Standards Board website, and I can very quickly go to ASOP 25, and I can now look for those sections that it found it. Um, so Bayesian. So there it is, Bayesian credibility procedures. That's the section that it found listed in Excel in my matches over here. So this is just kind of a quick and handy tool with working on finding certain things within ASOPs. Again, it goes to that main web page and it just does a search on the ASOPs for you. Okay, so let's just do a couple other things. I'm going to do the trend setup and then I'm going to do some of these shortcuts because we still have a little bit of time here. So I'm going to show you the trend setup feature. I'm going to go back to this example data set that I was working with. This one, I could call it kind of like a trend applicator. Um, so what this does is it sets up midpoint to midpoint trending for you. This would be, I think, more useful if you had like um, a lot of different trending types as well as a lot of different trending periods. I know sometimes maybe just in like the healthcare environment, maybe you only want to apply utilization trend to your units and you're only going from your base period to whatever your projection period is. Um, this application would be a little bit different. This would be like if you're combining your utilization and your unit cost and you want it to go from your base period to multiple periods. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I selected like allowed amount, insurance amount, paid amount, let's say remember all three of those I want to apply my trend to. And let's say I've got 3 trending periods. Let's say I've got 3 trend types. So I'm going to call these. I mean, maybe you're looking at prescription drugs like generic brand specialty. Maybe those would be your 3 trending types. You could have something like that. I'm just going to call this A, B, and C. Maybe it's utilization, unit cost, and other. And let's just suppose I'm going to leave these. You could update these periods, but let's say my data is from January 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. And right now it's automated to go by year. However, I could change these trending periods to be anything I want. But let's just say I knew that in period one, trend A is 1%, trend B is 2%, trend C is 1%. And let's suppose they change in period two to 2, 1, 1, and then maybe 3, 3, 4. So I'm going to press the button. I'm going to let it run. And so what this is going to do is it's going to now create a setup where at the top, I've got my various periods. So I've got my base period. I've got period one, which was 2027, period two, which was 2018, and period three, which was 2019. It's got the summary of the trends that I listed, and it's got the calculation of your midpoint to midpoint. These are now all one because I'm going from year to year. But again, I could flexibly update these, and these would update so that it would do midpoint to midpoint trending. You can see right now it's divided by 365.25 for my year. So you could update that as you see fit. But that's why you see a slight difference. You're going to have your leap years and things like that. So down here, I've got my 3 things that were trended. So I've got allowed amount, insurance paid amount, and member paid amount. And then you can see actually that each of these is going to be trending off of the base data. So it's taking my 3 types of trends. So it's a total trend. It's applying all 3 trend types from my base data to period one. It's now trending period 1 to period 2 and period 2 to period 3. So it's just a quick way to set up some midpoint to midpoint trending for your data. And then if I go down to the bottom, it's got a few checks down here. So this is just checking that your data is flowing correctly. And then this is showing what's the total trend that you applied. So it'll show you by year as well as in total. Those are the same right now because my total is just it's set up by year. So I could have trended each period by 3 years. Maybe period 1 or period 2 is 3 years away from period 1, then my total would be different than my yearly. Um, but you can see 4.05% would match the compounded total of those three. Um, and then the last one, what do we have? 10.34% should match my compounded total of those three. So, anyway, this is your trend applicator tool. Um, and I want to make sure that I show you a couple other things. So, I'm going to flip over to the next tool. I'm going to show you some shortcuts. These are just some random shortcuts that I find helpful over time. Um, this first one is definitely not actuarial in nature, but could be used by really anyone using Excel. This is just for hiding and unhiding sheets. So, really quickly, I can see all the ones that are currently visible, and I can very quickly hide those. Um, so boom. Now I only have 3 unhidden tabs, or I can see what all my hidden tabs are. So now you can see if I right click on hide, I got a bunch of hidden tabs. So now let's go over. See, you could do it. You could click on that tool, but I like this sheet view because now I can just quickly say, oh, I want those two unhidden, and I can select it all of them and just hit hide on hide, and now they're all unhidden. So that's just kind of a quick hit tool for hiding unhiding sheets. Sometimes I find it a pain if I have a big actuarial model open and there's a lot of tabs. Find this to be a lot quicker. Um, okay, let's go over to YouTube. I realize I've been missing questions. First question was, hello, can I ask what is it? I apologize. I missed that question, so I'm not sure what that was related to. Let me know in the comments, and I can answer that question. I wish the hide on hide sheet feature was built-in feature. I know. I wish it was too. Again, it's like a quick hit tool, super easy to use. Not that it's even a main tool in the toolkit. I just I've found it useful over time. So it makes life a little bit easier. Um, Okay, another quick hit tool that I really like is the formatting tool. So quite oftentimes I'll be working on something where I want to format data. Let's just say this is a table that I'm working on where I want to format it. So right now there's a default format and then it allows you to save a format for your table. So let's just say that I want to use the default. I hit apply formats and real quick it applied my save table format to this table. So you can see it's using this blue, it's using a white background so you don't see the lines. It has borders on the sides and it's just like a nice looking table. Now let's just suppose that I want to update that. I can save a new table style. So let's just say let's go crazy. Let's just say A, B, C, and the first one, let's make yellow. I don't know. We'll just use whatever font we want. Let's go size 20. Let's go center. Let's say let's say I want my titles to look like that. Let's say I want my data. I'm just gonna make this look weird, just so you can see how this feature works. Um, let's go here. Let's go size 15. Let's go italics, and then let's do one more. Um, make it green. And let's go right and let's do a new font and let's go 25. So, okay, you can see these are crazy, but I just want just to show you how this feature works. Let's suppose now I want to save my new format and I'm going to go over to save table style. So there's three options. There's save header, save data, and save totals. And then at the bottom, you see restore defaults. So if I want to go back to the blue white one that I have here, I could restore that. But let's just say I want this one over here to be my total. So or my titles. I should be looking over here. Amazing product, Paul. Hey, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And sorry for this is a very long YouTube so far because what time did I start? 7:30. I've been going for an hour 15. See, this is what happens like when I start getting excited about something. This is my students when I taught, they would always have to tell me to shut up at the end because I would just get going on something and then I wouldn't stop. But I promise I will stop soon. But thank you. I appreciate that. And all right. So let's say that I want to save my header. And let's say the border I want to be just an outside border and I want it to be medium. The reason there's border selection, you could select a border in here, but the problem is, let's say you have like 10 columns and you want to put a border around the entire 10. So that's what I'm telling it to do. And then let's say in the data, I want column outside, which is like this current default. It's just borders on the outside of the column. And let's make that thin. And let's say the totals I wanted to be outside and inside, and I want it to be thick. This is going to look crazy, but I just for an example. So I'm going to select A, save my style. Now I'm going to select B, save my data style. Now I'm going to select C and save my total style. Okay, now I've got new format saved. Now let's look at this craziness. So let's go here, apply formats. There you go. Obviously, you would never use these formats because that looks terrible, but I'm just showing you that it now saved my format. So now if I close Excel and reopen, I still have this save format out there. And I can apply that to any table I want. Like I can go down any section that I want to apply it to. I've now got that saved table. But let's let's get rid of this. I don't like this anymore. It's hurting my eyes. So let's go back to save table, restore defaults. Okay, let's go apply. And we're back to square one. So this is kind of your nice set format. But again, I know different companies, different people have different styles they like. So it allows you to save any style. And I think it's just a nice time saver because throughout the day when I'm formatting tables, I hate just, manually selecting, changing all that, manually selecting. So kind of a nice little shortcut. Last two things I'm going to show you in the shortcuts, compare numbers and trend solver. This is like more for if I'm in a meeting, for example. And I don't like looking at this. This is, well, let's just change this all back. We'll go like that. I don't care. I'll leave some of the borders in there. Oh, now I made these disappear. That's fine. So let's just say I'm in a meeting and I'm like looking at some numbers and I want a quick comparison of two numbers. I know this may look simple, but it really actually helps me. So let's say I'm comparing 203 and 720. You can highlight those two and it just gives you a quick hit of 203 is 28% of 720. 720 is 354% of 203. 203 increased by 254% results in 720. 720 decreased by 71% results in 203. It gives you all the permutations of how you might list a percentage when you're talking in actuarial land. So you can very quickly see what the increase is from one to the other. It's more of like, so I don't have to do mental math. I That's why I like this one. I can highlight 98 and 90, and I can just real quick see a comparison of the two numbers. That's really all this is a it's a calculator of comparisons. Again, I know I know it seems very simple, but it's something that I personally like because sometimes I'm comparing 735 and 214, and I don't immediately know that it's about three times the size of 214. Now I can quickly see that. So again, sort of a quick hit tool. And the last one that's sort of like that is the trend solver. So sometimes I might be looking at some number and I'm like, I know that we want to be close to 800 in 2 years from now, and we're at 720 now. What's the trend that's required to get there? So this will back solve into the trend, and it's just telling you that The required annual trend to get from 720 to 800 in 2 years is 5.41% per year. So this is more of a trend solver. So you can see as I go up, my trend's going to go down, right? So let's choose 80.13% per year to get to 800. So this is a quick hit tool for just looking at targets. So maybe I'm at $8 now. So I'll select the 8 and I just want to see like, hey, after a year, it would be 87.5% in increase in a year, maybe in 3 years, 23% per year. So again, that's sort of a quick hit calculator to help you do maybe on the fly calculations. So wow, I feel like I'm about to lose my voice from all this talking. So I think I made it through all the tools. And again, there's so much I could say about every single one of these. Um, but I think that's probably a good place to stop for now. And this is really showing you what the suite of tools exists, like what the ones that are out there today, which ones exist, and knowing that this is kind of going to be constantly being enhanced and improved over time. And if you do subscribe to the product, there is over here some questions and feedback. There's a new tool suggestion feature. So if you want to send me ideas or things that you're thinking about at your company that you could really find useful, those are things that I would consider over time. And you could send me your ideas, and I'd love to see those. So again, this is ever evolving over time. I see this as being enhanced and expanded, and I think that's part of the value of subscribing. So um, if you're joining and watching and you're at a company, um, let your fellow actuaries know, or your chief actuary, or whoever's in charge of looking at the products. But um, for right now, I have the pricing set at it's kind of tiered. So if you're just an individual user, it'd be 199 a year, and then it kind of goes down if you have more and more people sign up. Um, but I think it's a valuable product, and I think it's well worth it because I think you would save way more in time on the $199 in a year. That would be well worth the investment. So um, I find it useful. Obviously, I'm the one that created it, and I think these are things that I found helpful over time, and I have so many ideas of really cool stuff that I want to add to this and improve upon. So I'm excited about it. Um, and then let me see what else we got on the questions. Uh, I like the fact that you are solving small problems that are a big deal when one is working with Excel every day. It takes a lot of experience to know the exact pain points. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I would agree. It definitely, these are like a lot of I know some of like the last ones seemed simple, but it's like those are just little random things that I feel like I do throughout the day that I'm like, oh, I just wish I had a quick hit tool for that. Let's see, what was the next question? Is this vanilla VBA? I would love if you created a course to teach people how to build tools like this. That's actually a great idea. Yes, this is. This is all built in VBA and XML. So XML was used to design the ribbon, and then it is all VBA based. And partly, um, there's some advantage to that. Like and I think one cool thing would be you can develop these tools in .NET, and you can actually create a lot of other types of flexible features. But there's some advantages to using inherent VBA, and the fact that it all runs locally within Excel is an advantage, especially I think for actuaries where you're dealing with a lot of sensitive data. So you have to be very careful with what kinds of tools that you use. Um, so that would be one comment I have on that, and I will think about doing a course. That's actually a great idea. I would love to do something like that. I do have a teaching background, and I do love VBA, so there we go. That'd be cool. Maybe that will be a future thing. Um, and what else was I going to say about that? Just thinking about future tools that are coming. Like on the note of it running locally, like I have some cool ideas for AI integration as well. But a lot of the AI products that are out there are cloud based, and that's where you have to be very, very careful it can do a lot of cool stuff, but not every company is going to allow access to certain things with security of your data and what you're working with. So that's something where, yeah, there's just kind of a caveat there. But I do have some ideas for the future, where maybe there could be some stuff like that. But right now, it's all locally run, so you don't have to worry about sensitive data going out to a cloud or anything. So, okay, I think I'm gonna end it there. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to put it in the comments. Feel free to email Paul at actuarialtoolkit.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, go through any demos, talk about tools, things of that nature. I'm super excited about it. And thank you for joining the launch of Actuarial Toolkit today. And I will be ending this and looking for other comments that come along the way. Thanks.